Where the sea meets the land, the results can be devastating. All these people's jobs and homes are under threat. This road was built for a village that simply isn't here anymore. So what's going on? We're going to travel down the northeast coast between Flamborough Head and Spurn Point to see how this coastline's changing. This coastline was not always where it is today. 100,000 years ago, there was a shallow bay here. An ice sheet covered northern Europe and was expanding across the North Sea. The ice was wearing away at the seabed, lifting up large boulders, stones, sand and clay as it moved. Finally, the ice sheet stopped growing and started melting. As it retreated, it left behind a thick, soft blanket of the mud, stone and sand it had been carrying. This is called boulder clay. The ice melted and the sea rose again. Settlers soon started to farm this new expanse of soft boulder clay. But over the years, more than 30 villages have disappeared. This is Europe's fastest eroding coastline. White chalk dips down under the soft brown boulder clay, which was left by the ice sheet. Because these cliffs are softer, erosion here is faster. Sometimes there's hardly time to form a notch before the whole cliff slumps down. Meters of land can be lost every year. This really matters when people live close to the edge. Mr. Cross lives in the seaside village of Barmston.
We purchased this property some 11 years ago, in the full knowledge that sooner or later it would drop into the sea. At that time we were something like 40, 50 yards from the cliff edge, and now we're more like 20. I understand that there's something like 30 houses running parallel to the cliff top right down the coast there, which have all disappeared into the sea utterly and completely.
These water pipes and electricity cables used to be connected to houses that were swallowed by the sea.
It is horrific. I think it's all to do with the type of material of which the cliffs are composed.
When the boulder clay is eroded by waves, tiny clay particles are taken up by the water and float in a fine suspension. You can see this thick brown water along the shoreline. Larger sand particles and stones from the eroding boulder clay are carried southwards along the beach by wind and waves. Along the coast at Mappleton, the local council have built rock walls called groins. These stick out to sea and catch the drifting particles, building up this protective beach in front of the town. This keeps the waves from attacking the cliffs at Mappleton, but has effects further south. Sue Earle runs a farm a kilometre away.
They put a rock groin, which is a rock barrier going out to sea, made of rocks from Norway, and this has stopped the sediment coming down to our land and protected the bottom of our cliff. So we did have an erosion rate of 3 feet a year, and now we get 30 feet a year. And if you go to the bottom of the cliff, you can see big boulders of clay. And there is no sand on the beach. So every tide, when the tide comes in, it's hitting the bottom of the cliff and eroding the clay away. In the wintertime, the house shakes when the sea hits the bottom of the cliff. This is basically a livestock, animal farm. All our cows are Friesians, and unfortunately they're very inquisitive. If the earth is unstable, and it can fall down the cliff. We have chickens, we have 8 cats and 3 dogs. Also we have 3 Shetland ponies.
But the dairy has got to be demolished before it also falls into the sea.
All the cows will have to be sold this next year because we cannot afford to build a new dairy. In front of the house and the dairy there was fields where the cows used to graze and crops could be grown, but that is now all gone.
In 35 years, the sea has eaten over 60 metres inland.
When they do protect an area, it does cause problems in other areas and increase the erosion for somebody else.
Further down the coast is the seaside resort of Withernsea. These old sea defences are worn out. The force of the waves shakes the houses behind. The local council are investing in new sea defences to protect the town from this destructive energy. Harry is the site manager in charge of building a new sea wall.
This is where we're going to put the base, and this is the actual wall. And then we project the wall up into a splashback. So when the waves hit the wall, it splashes and throws the water back into the sea.
This design doesn't just stop the waves, it deflects their energy harmlessly out to sea. Hundreds of these sections are being cast in reinforced concrete, making a solid wall along the seafront. Outside this wall, they're adding a second sea defence that's come all the way from Norway on this gigantic barge. These are hard granite boulders weighing 10 tons each. They're going to be piled up in front of the seawall. Because they can move a bit as the waves hit them, they absorb some of the sea's energy before it reaches the wall. These new sea defences stretch over 1 kilometre along Withernsea beach. Erosion is a problem for big business too. Out in the North Sea, drilling platforms bring up gas from the rocks 2 miles below. This gas is pumped 18 miles back to dry land to the British gas terminal at Easington. Here they purify it, ready for use in factories and for cooking and heating at home. At its busiest, 1/4 of all Britain's gas comes through this site. It's here because this land is the closest to the offshore gas fields. This is where all the different processes are controlled. They even give the gas a smell for safety. They thought North Sea gas would last 25 years, so they built this terminal far enough away from the soft clay cliffs to last that long. But the gas is still flowing. Now the sea is only 12 metres from the fence. Jim, an engineer at the terminal, is worried about how quickly the cliff is eroding. They're making plans for their own sea defences. They'd like to make a wall of rocks along the base of the cliffs, like those at Withersea. Flamborough, Barmston, Mappleton, Cowden Farm, Withersea and Easington Gas Terminal are all along this eroding coastline. And just south is Spurn Point.